Hello, anybody watching. My name is Dylan, and I like to build houses in The Sims 4, and today I am continuing on with my Wisteria Lane house series. So today we have 4362 Wisteria Lane. That is the home of Edie Britt in seasons 1 through 5. Yeah, that sounds about right. 1 through 5, and then the house of Renee Perry in seasons 7 and 8, if I'm remembering correctly. So Edie lives in this house. She's definitely a fan favorite. People love her. She lives in this house, like I said, until season 5, when she unfortunately dies. Spoiler. And then nothing really happens for the house for a couple years. And then Renee moves in, and Renee is very similar to Edie as far as personality and style-wise goes. But they're definitely not the same character. And Renee has nowhere near the amount of pull, I guess, that Edie does on the show. If you remember Desperate Housewives, you remember Edie. You very well might not remember Renee, and that's not because of Vanessa Williams' acting. I feel like I say that all the time. Every time I criticize a character, it's not because of their acting. It's because they just aren't written very well sometimes, because it's a character written by a person, and sometimes not as much love and attention goes into their character. But anyway, I digress. So I did decide to style this house similarly whatever. Decided to make it look more like Renee Perry's house than it does Edie Britt's. And I did that on purpose because when you look at like screenshots of this house, most of the ones that you're going to find are that of the styling of Renee Perry. I think that's mostly because her seasons are the most recent seasons, the ones with Renee Perry, and that's when kind of more people had access to screenshots, and they started really caring about stuff like this. Was back in like 2011, 2012, versus Edie being on the show from 2004 to 2009. Screenshots of TV shows were not as common then, and like there wasn't any like internet memes and stuff like that. So there is not very many screenshots. Long story short. And that's what I used to base this house off of. I didn't go back and watch the whole show or anything, although I should, but I don't need to, because it's like it's kind of like my life anyway. I don't need to rewatch my life over and over and over again, right? So like I said, so it is designed to reflect the style of Renee, but I think that it works. It's very cute. It's very stylish and very, I don't know if modern is the right word, but it looks very good. And if you decide that you want to have this house and design it more like what Edie's character does, you certainly can do that. You can find a couple of pictures like of her bedroom and stuff. But either way, like I said, the characters are very similar. It's not really that big a deal if you've got a house that looks like Renee's versus Edie's on the inside, because the exterior is basically the same. The only thing that's different when Renee moves in is there's that little kind of octagonal bump out right there you can see in the front. And then when it's Edie's house, that's actually not there. It's just flat. Fun fact, though, this house is actually not Edie's first house. Her original house burns down in the very first episode of the show, when Susan Meyer walks into Edie's house because she's trying to find Mike Delfino, who she's got a crush on, who just moved into the neighborhood. And she moves in. She goes to Edie's house because she thinks that he is there. And she sees all these like candles everywhere, and she assumes that Mike and Edie are having sex in their bedroom upstairs, and she kind of like throws a fit a little bit, and she accidentally knocks down a candle, I think, and then like runs away. She tries to put out the fire and then runs away. And as she's running away, you hear Edie, and she's like, "Is someone down there?" And then like the next shot is her house on fire. And then we find out that, it's fine because Mike wasn't in there anyway. So it's like she literally burned down Edie's house for nothing. And it was a complete accident, but she did. She burned down the house. And then that's part of the mystery of season 1. I mean, the mystery of season 1 is Mary Alice's suicide, but another part of that kind of mystery or part of the drama of season 1 is, will Edie find out that Susan burned down her house, and what will she do when she does find out that she burned down her house? And so then Susan does go and tell Edie that she burned down her house, and she does so kind of out of guilt because Edie's friend Martha Hubert, can't pronounce words today. Her friend Martha dies, and Martha is the one who blackmailed Mary Alice in the first place, but whatever. But Martha dies, and she's very good friends with Edie, and so Susan is being super nice to her because, her friend just died, and nobody else is really being nice to her because nobody really likes Edie, and nobody really liked Martha Hubert anyway. So then Susan's being super nice to her because she burned down her house and she doesn't want her to find out. And so Edie goes to scatter the ashes of Martha in like a lake or something. And for some reason, that's when Susan decides to tell her that I burned down your house. And so what does Edie do? She takes Martha Hubert's ashes and throws them in her face, and then makes her row her back because they're in a rowboat, and she's got to row Edie back to shore with Martha's ashes all over her whole face, which is so gross, but that's very classic Edie for you. That's something that she does. And then Edie, like I said in my Wisteria Lane tour video, she went and burned down Susan's house because she found out that Susan was sleeping with her own ex-husband, who was Edie's Edie's boyfriend at the time. And so, what does Edie do? She goes ahead and burns down Susan's house for retaliation, basically. And then she ends up telling her, Edie tells her pretty quickly that she burned down her house. And so then Susan, sorry, I'm just talking a lot now. I'm remembering everything. But then Susan goes to Edie's house to try to get her to admit again that she burned down her house. And so she can get Edie in trouble. It's either that or so she can get money for her house or something like that. And Edie admits to it, and Susan is wearing a wire, and she finds out that Susan's wearing a wire, so Susan has to like run out, and Edie chases her, and they fall into a yard. I think it's is it Ida Greenberg's yard, or is it I don't know whose yard. I guess it doesn't matter, but she falls into someone's yard that has like basically killer wasps or yellow jackets or whatever they're called. And they like basically eat Edie alive, and she survives, but like her whole face gets like super swollen. She has to go to the hospital, and it's played off for laughs, and it is kind of funny. But at the same time, like if that actually happened, that would be like a legitimately traumatizing experience, I think. Like I've actually never been stung actually, no, that's not true. I was stung by a bee one time, but if I had gotten stung to a point where my entire face and body is swollen, I mean, I don't know if I'd ever leave my house again. I don't really ever leave my house anyway, but I especially wouldn't if I had to, go out and with a grotesque appearance because I got murdered by killer bees. I guess the show, that was probably in 2006 when that happened. They're just predicting the future because now apparently we're supposed to be worrying about killer bees in 2020 or killer hornets or whatever. So, the show is just ahead of its time. What can I say? So after Edie passes away, which is in season 5, unfortunately, there was actually a lot of behind the scenes drama with Nicolette Sheridan, who's the actress who plays Edie, and the creator of the show, Mark Cherry. It's not quite clear exactly what happened or why it came to the ending that it did, with Nicolette Sheridan on the show, I should say. But so she dies. She's written out of the show. And like I said, a couple of seasons later, we're introduced to Renee Perry, who is friends with not Edie. She's friends with Lynette from college, I believe. And they've apparently known each other for 20 something years, although of course Lynette has never mentioned her before. All of a sudden we're supposed to believe that these two people who are not really all that similar, all of a sudden, yeah, they've been friends for 20 years. Okay, sure. But Renee Perry comes to town, and initially it was a really big deal because it was this famous person, Vanessa Williams, coming to be on the show. And I would say out of everybody who was coming to the show, Vanessa Williams was probably the most famous by the time the show started. Or excuse me, by the time she started on the show, I should say. By the time she was on the show, all of the actresses playing the housewives were famous because the show had been on for 6 or 7 years, and it was, I think it was a top 10 show for a good chunk of its run. So they were already famous by then. But when the show first started in 2004, the most famous person was Terry Hatcher, and she wasn't even really that famous, to be quite honest. So what I'm getting at is, they made this huge deal about Vanessa Williams joining the show, and she's going to be, a Maine housewife, and she's only the second Black housewife that's ever been on the show, and they're planning on having her for more than one season, so it's supposed to be this big deal. And then the character comes in, and she kind of sucks. It's not because of Vanessa Williams acting or anything. She's just not really there. They made this promo. It's kind of a famous promo, I would say, where all the housewives are walking down Wisteria Lane, and because they see someone new, and they're all like, who's coming into our neighborhood? And then they're all wearing these red outfits, and Vanessa Williams comes in wearing this beautiful black dress, and she's like, she says something to the effect of, there's a new housewife in town, or something like that. And that was the promo for season 7. And then season 7 starts, and she doesn't do anything. She's not part of the story. She's not part of the mystery. She doesn't really matter, and nobody really cares about her. I guess at that point, they had decided that, wait, what? I don't even remember what was the mystery of season 7, because there's a different mystery every season. But I can't for the life of me remember what the mystery of season 7 was. But I know it was not Renee Perry. It was not Renee Perry. She had nothing to do with the mystery at all. The only thing that really was a problem, I think, for Renee Perry was that she ended up telling Lynette in season 7 that her and Tom, which is Lynette's husband, they slept together when they were 25 years old or 20, something very young, when they were in college, and Lynette and Tom were on a break. And that ends up kind of causing some marital strife for Lynette, but I mean, what else is new, really? And it kind of, I guess that does begin the beginning of the end of Tom and Lynette's marriage in season 7, although, spoiler, but they don't, so they end up separating at the very end of season 7, and that moment or whatever where Renee tells her that, it wasn't the only thing that got him to that point. There was, it had been boiling all season that they were going to break up, and then this happened, and it was kind of just the final straw, I believe. I think Lynette initially, she was hurt by it, but then she ends up not telling Tom about it, that she knows, and so she starts playing all these little pranks on him, which I think is stupid. But so she was doing that. And then eventually he finds out, I believe, that she knows. And then I think he gets mad at her that she found out and didn't tell him, and decided to play all these pranks on him instead of just talking to him about it, which, if that's the case, if I'm remembering it correctly, I agree. And so then he ends up they end up separating at the end of the season. So that was part of it. And then they had a whole bunch of other stuff that was going on to them. But that's really the only thing that Renee Perry did. And then I guess in season 8, she did maybe a little bit more. She was connected to Ben Faulkner. Faulkner? I cannot pronounce names today, apparently, but she was connected to Ben, who was he wasn't really part of the mystery, I guess, of season 8. But he was connected to it. He had something to do with it, if that makes sense. She was going to get married to him. And she did, actually. In the last episode of the last season, season 8, it ends kind of weirdly on Renee's wedding. Not the whole show, but it's a focus of the last episode. And I remember talking to my best friend, and we still kind of make jokes. It's like, why would you end the show on Renee's wedding? Like, she's a non-character, basically. Like, she doesn't really, nobody cares about Renee's wedding drama in the last episode of the show. Like, I'm sorry, like, we don't care. But in the last episode, though, Vanessa Williams does look very pretty in her wedding dress. I absolutely will give her that. She's a very striking and stunning woman. But yeah, the fact that they like decided to, kind of end the show on a Renee note is kind of silly to me. I guess it makes sense though, because they say the show ends with a death, a birth, and a wedding, which I guess which it does. And I guess that kind of is the most Desperate Housewives way to end the show. But I just wish it wouldn't have been Renee's, because who cares about Renee? She's a very good actress, though, I will say. She's very distinctive. And I like her as an actress. I guess just the character didn't really do much for me. Oh my God, we're already at the pictures. I was not... When you start talking, you just start talking and you forget that you're trying to tie it all together. So anyway, this is 4362 Wisteria Lane. I hope you're still here, and I hope you enjoy this house. You can find it on my gallery at Carl Dillinson. And this and all my other Wisteria Lane houses too. So I am going to cut off here, but if you like what you see, feel free to subscribe to my channel. I would love it if you would subscribe, but I will still love you, even if you don't. I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day, a fabulous weekend as well. Bye-bye.